In December 2023, the United States grounded every V-22 Osprey it owned. A gearbox had failed off the coast of Japan, and the most controversial aircraft in the American fleet simply stopped flying. The headlines wrote themselves: the flying disgrace, the one with the worst record in the sky. But none of them connected the part that actually matters. The exact design choice behind that reputation, a single bet buried in the size of its rotors, is the same choice that makes the Osprey the one aircraft the Pentagon can't replace in the Pacific right now. The danger and the reach aren't opposites. They're the same number. Read two ways. Call it the Proprotor Bet. Every argument about the Osprey starts in the wrong place. People argue about the crashes and the cost, about whether it should ever have been built at all. None of that is the root. The root is a single number, chosen on a drafting table decades ago, and almost nobody says it out loud. The aircraft does not have helicopter rotors. It has proprotors, blades that work as a helicopter rotor when the nacelles point up, and as an airplane propeller when they tilt forward. One set of blades, two completely different jobs. And here is the constraint that decides everything. Those blades have to be short enough that the tips clear the fuselage in airplane mode, and short enough that the folded aircraft fits inside the deck footprint of a ship, clear of the island. The engineers landed on a diameter of 38 feet. For a machine this heavy, that is roughly 5 feet shorter than the rotor a pure helicopter of the same weight would want. 5 feet does not sound like a bet. It is the whole bet. And in 2026, with the Western Pacific turning into a problem of distance that no helicopter and no runway can answer, those 38 feet became the most consequential trade in the American arsenal. We will get to why. First, what they do to the air. Shrink the disc, and you raise something called disc loading, the weight each square foot of rotor has to hold up. A light training helicopter carries about 2.5 pounds per square foot. A heavy Sikorsky CH-53 carries around 15. The Osprey carries somewhere between 21 and 27, depending on how heavy it is flying. 2 to 7 times a conventional helicopter. Picture the difference between standing on a snowshoe and standing on a stiletto heel. Same weight, far less area, far more pressure driven down through a much smaller hole in the air. The blades themselves are strange too. They carry a 47.5-degree twist from root to tip, far more aggressive than a helicopter blade, because one blade has to stay efficient at 2 speeds it was never meant to share. NASA's own performance work describes it in 4 words: higher twist, lower aspect ratio. A compromised blade over a compromised disc, run by a fly-by-wire system that blends helicopter and airplane control logic in the seconds the nacelles take to rotate. Nobody flies that transition by hand. The computer does it, because for those few seconds the aircraft is neither one thing nor the other. That is the Proprotor Bet. Make the rotor small enough to be a propeller and to fold for a ship, and everything else falls out of that one choice. So hold on to disc loading, because the next thing it explains is the part that put the Osprey on magazine covers for all the wrong reasons. Now read that number the way the headlines read it. A small disc moving a lot of air fast is a violent thing to stand under. The Osprey's downwash hits roughly 95 miles an hour close to the ground. Call it 100 knots of wind, driven straight down. A common light helicopter throws maybe 35. That is why ground crews brace, and why loose debris turns into a hazard every time it sets down. High disc loading costs you something worse than wind. It costs you the helicopter pilot's oldest insurance policy, autorotation. Lose your engines in a normal helicopter, and the big lightly loaded rotor keeps turning on the airflow alone, letting you glide down to a survivable landing. The Osprey's small, heavily loaded proprotors do not store enough of that energy to do it well. In 2004, the Marine Corps stopped pretending otherwise. It formally dropped the autorotation requirement for the aircraft and replaced it with a softer standard, a survivable emergency landing. The bet, written into the requirements in black and white. Then there is the failure mode that defines the whole reputation. Vortex-ring state. Descend too fast with too little forward speed, and a rotor sinks into its own downwash. The air it just pushed down curls back up through the disc, and lift collapses. Every helicopter can do this. The Navy's flight manual draws a hard line for the Osprey: no descent faster than 800 feet per minute below 40 knots. On the 8th of April, 2000, near Marana, Arizona, an Osprey came down at over 2,000 feet per minute, about 250% of that limit. 19 Marines were lost. The Marine general who briefed the finding put it without comfort. The aircraft, he said, descended too quickly, 250% the acceptable rate. And the tiltrotor carries a cruelty the single-rotor helicopter does not. 2 discs, side by side. In a hard descent, one can enter vortex-ring state a heartbeat before the other, and the aircraft rolls toward the sinking side before anyone can answer it. Asymmetric vortex-ring state, a way to fall that only an aircraft shaped like this one even has. That is the bill. Brutal downwash, no real autorotation, a knife edge at low speed, and a mechanically dense drivetrain that has written its own grim entries. From the clutch failure in California in 2022 to the proprotor gearbox off Yakushima in 2023. 65 lives across the program's history by the Congressional Research Service's July 2025 count. It is a real ledger, and it is the entire case for the prosecution. Now turn the page, because every line of that bill is written in the same ink as the reason the Pentagon will not let the Osprey go. Here is the move almost nobody makes. Take disc loading, the exact property behind the downwash and the descent rules, and ask what else it buys. A small rotor is a small problem in forward flight. The thing that makes the Osprey a handful in a hover is the thing that lets it stop being a helicopter at all. Tilt the nacelles forward, and those stubby, high-twist protos turn into efficient propellers pulling a clean-winged airplane through the air. Low drag, no vast rotor disc fighting the wind. The aircraft cruises around 240 to 255 knots and tops out near 280, close to twice the speed of the helicopters it flies beside. Speed is only half of what the small disc returns. The other half is range. Because it flies as an airplane for most of a mission, the Osprey sips fuel where a helicopter drains it. The Navy's cargo variant can haul 6,000 pounds, 1,100 nautical miles. With a single aerial refueling, an Osprey can self-deploy across more than 2,100 nautical miles of open ocean, flying itself to the fight instead of riding there crated on a ship. Its reach runs close to 3 times that of a UH-60 Blackhawk. No helicopter on the planet matches it, and no airplane that needs a runway can land where it lands. Look at what just happened. The 95-mile-an-hour downwash, the 800-foot descent limit, the missing autorotation. Every one of those is the small, heavily loaded disc. The 280-knot dash and the 2,000-mile self-deploy are that exact same disc. Read the number one way, and it is a hazard. Read it the other way, and it is a map of the Pacific Ocean. One geometry. The danger and the reach are not 2 facts about this aircraft. They are the same fact, told from opposite ends. This is the part people split hard on, so I want your call on it. If you think a machine that buys that much reach is worth flying with that much edge, drop the word worth below. If you think no map is worth that descent line, write nailed instead. I read them. Hold that trait in your head, because in 2026 a very specific stretch of ocean started asking for exactly this number. The problem the United States is trying to solve in the Western Pacific is, before anything else, a problem of distance. The theater is thousands of miles of water broken up by small islands, and the bases that used to anchor American air power now sit inside the range of missiles built to hit them on the first morning of a conflict. The Marine Corps answer, written into its force design overhaul and a doctrine called Expeditionary Advanced Base Operations, is to stop being a big target, scatter into small teams on small islands, and keep them moving faster than they can be found and ranged. That doctrine reads almost like a parts list for the Osprey. It has to cross open ocean between islands, which is range. It has to land where there is no runway, because there won't be one, and that is vertical takeoff. Then it has to leave fast enough that the position it just held is empty by the time anyone reacts, which is speed. A helicopter brings the vertical landing and runs out of range. A cargo plane brings the range and needs a runway it will not have. The Osprey is the one airframe that carries all of it at once, and it carries it because of the bet. This is not a brochure argument. In August 2025, a Marine Osprey dropped sonobuoys alongside Navy MH-60R Seahawks, the first forward-deployed Osprey hunting submarines in the Indo-Pacific, a job nobody drew it for. Japan read the same logic and acted on it. By the summer of that year, its entire fleet of 17 tiltrotors sat permanently at Camp Saga on Kyushu, positioned to cover the southwest island chain. A March 2026 analysis reduced the case to one line. Pacific operations have shown the aircraft can move forces over distances helicopter aviation simply cannot cover with comparable payload. That same year, crews flew a marine tanker refueling demonstration to stretch the reach further still, so the Osprey no longer has to trust an exposed patch of ground for its fuel. The Pentagon's own word for all this is not irreplaceable. It is essential. The practical meaning is the same. The mission was built around the one aircraft that took the bet, and nothing else in the inventory can pay it back. None of this makes the ledger disappear. In December 2025, the Government Accountability Office reported that the Osprey still carries 28 unresolved catastrophic risk assessments, some of them open for 6 to 14 years, and that serious accident rates climbed sharply across 2023 and 2024. The grounding after the gearbox loss off Yakushima was real. Vice Admiral Carl Chebby, who runs Naval Air Systems Command, refused to clear the fleet for unrestricted flight before the middle of 2025, and said so plainly, he would not certify it until the issues were addressed. Both pages of the ledger are true at the same time. The aircraft is essential, and it is unforgiving, and those two things are not in tension, they are the same sentence. Because here is what the whole story comes down to. The 38-foot rotor is the worst flaw, and the design at once. You do not get the reach without the edge, because the physics that grants the first forbids the last. There is no version of this aircraft that crosses that much ocean, lands on that small an island, and also forgives a fast descent. The flaw is not a defect bolted onto a good aircraft. It is the signature of the exact capability the Pentagon decided it could not do without. If you want the physics, not the press release, subscribe. That is the whole reason this channel exists. So here is the question to sit with. The Marine Corps already answered it back in 2004, when it crossed out the word autorotation and wrote down survivable instead. They decided the reach was worth the edge. The successor, the MV-75, is still years away, and the Osprey is slated to keep flying into the 2050s. So when the next aircraft that buys an impossible capability shows up wearing an impossible flaw, and it will, which one will you read first, the bill or the map?